I'm Duncan Clubb. I'm the head of the Digital Infrastructure Advisory Practice in CBRE's Data Center Solutions Group. I mostly advise investors, occupiers, as in the enterprise customers, and data center operators on data center strategy and digital infrastructure strategy. I think there are two real focuses. One is on making large-scale infrastructure, so data centers and big IT infrastructure programs more efficient, and that's both financially in terms of energy efficiency and sustainability, but predominantly it's about adapting the ways that large enterprises use data centers and other technologies like cloud to provide services in a more more informed manner. The whole landscape's become a lot more complicated in the last few years, with people moving towards hybrid strategies for delivering IT services, and I think things are going to get even more complicated as new technologies and new types of infrastructure such as edge come into play. And our role is really to help our clients find their way through, develop really efficient strategies for deploying IT, and to make them generally more flexible, remove risk and reduce costs. I think that the move towards a more mix of working from home, working from alternative locations, is making the whole workforce a lot more distributed. The new sort of compute models are all more distributed, not just because of that, but it's certainly producing an accelerating factor in moving the whole types of large-scale infrastructure towards supporting a more distributed workforce. And I think that the some of the lessons we've learnt during the lockdowns in particular have shown up some of the shortfalls in the way that data centers in particular are organized. For me, it's shown that the enterprise data center, the on-premise data center, becomes a lot more difficult to support during a lockdown, whereas cloud and co-location services, because they support a large number of clients, become recognized more as critical infrastructure and probably find it easier to maintain services. They certainly have a better time increasing capacity and bringing in additional bandwidth and other services online than enterprise data centers do. So for me, it's helping improve the business case for proper hybrid infrastructure strategies. So the use of cloud and colo, we've seen it already going up at a much faster rate than it was before the pandemic. And I think that will continue for some time. So I think long term, when it all washes out, we'll see that the sort of hybrid models that a lot of companies are moving towards now will become the predominant model. I think at the moment it's still probably the case that most IT, as in more than 50% of IT workloads, sit in an enterprise data center, not in a co-location or cloud service. But I think that balance will shift towards colo and cloud much more rapidly from now on, and I think that the days of the enterprise data center are becoming rapidly moving towards their sunset time. I think in terms of the financial and energy efficiency arguments, there's no alternative but to use co-location and cloud services. Not for everyone, but for the vast majority of enterprise customers, I think that's what will end up being the predominant model. The whole edge model, the distributed compute model, and that whole move towards a more digitized infrastructure is going to actually produce fairly major change, and for a number of reasons. First of all, there's a new class of applications that people and businesses are going to be using that are going to rely on huge amounts more data consumption generation than before, and a lot of this is down to the use of very high definition video streams, and these are data sources that produce humongous amounts of data and constantly, most of which needs to be processed quickly and locally, so it doesn't end up clogging the networks with basically data that has a very, very limited lifespan. I think we're going to see a very large acceleration in the deployment of edge resources. It's just begun to happen. I mean, people like me have been working on this for like 3 years, but I think over the last 12 months we've seen a real change, especially in Europe, but even in the US there's been a lot more activity than before, and I think for next year we're seeing the potential for a huge amount more investment going into this area, but most importantly, the applications are beginning to appear that will drive even more development for edge infrastructure. So we're seeing this happening in a number of different industries and verticals, such as retail, healthcare and pharmaceuticals, in the transportation, automotive industries as well. They're all plowing huge amounts of money into developing new applications and new infrastructure to support these things. So I think there's some really exciting times coming in our space, and this will then start feeding into things like smart city technologies. So we're going to see a lot more development of 5G networks, high-speed fiber to the premise, so to the home, to the business, supporting edge infrastructure, and the whole thing will end up with a much more distributed environment that will allow, first of all, a whole new range of applications to be deployed, some really interesting ones as well, and it'll also, I think, as we sort of move towards a new balance of working, and I think with the impact on the way that big cities work, I mean these technologies are going to become hugely more important, and it's one of those things where you need lots and lots of things to come together all at the same time, and that's what we're beginning to see. So for me, very exciting time, and it affects most parts of the IT industry as well, and it opens up opportunities for all sorts of enterprises. So yeah, exciting times, I would say, and moving faster and faster as we speak.